to catch up. Welcome, welcome everyone who is joining. This is a live event. If you are watching this screen or joining us by YouTube, please know that this is a live Zoom event being hosted over on Zoom to catch up. And I will be unable to monitor or attend to any of the chat going on YouTube. However, I am so glad that you are watching and joining us. All right, let me get back to my screen here. Perfect. All right, let's get into it. Hi, my name is Valerie Lewis. I am a psychic, a channeler, a crazy intuitive, and I love crystals among other things. Lemurian crystals is near and dear to my heart. And today we are going to talk about Lemurian crystals, where they came from, how they can help us. We'll have a guided meditation. We'll talk about different ways to identify Lemurian crystals. The major portion will be about the Lemurian lore of this ancient civilization and what they are doing to aid humankind at this time. So thank you all for being here. I'm looking forward to a very exciting and fun-filled presentation today. As I mentioned, there will be times within today's presentation where I will pause and allow you all to ask questions. If something is pressing and you're afraid you're going to forget it, go ahead and put it in the chat. I do have helpers, co-moderators who will be looking at the chat for those questions. However, I do ask that when I open up the chat, that the chat stays on topic or that you use it for questions only, because it can get distracting when my co-moderators are trying to monitor the chat and monitor the live room. So, with that being said, we will go ahead and get into the presentation. The chat is now open. All right. What did I do with my notes that fast? The story of Lemuria. Dun, dun, dun. Once upon a time, there lived an amazingly talented and incredibly funny psychic named Valerie. It's me, that's me. I'm talking about me. And she was drawn to Lemurian crystals. At the time, I couldn't explain why I was so attracted to the crystals. I researched the crystals extensively and shared what I had learned with others. You can find that original event on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, and it was from April 2022. So it was a little over a year ago when I did that first event, when I first started researching Lemurian crystals. That first video or that first event was based upon my initial research. I researched, then I shared what I found. I shared everything that I found. I was just beginning to form my own beliefs about what was true and what wasn't about the stories that I had found on the internet. So I didn't really have a solid truth for myself yet, because again, I had just found out about the crystals and I had just researched, and I just shared everything that I had researched. So fast forward to today, a lot has changed since then. First, I want to again encourage you to go to my YouTube channel and find that initial video from last year, because you will hear a summary of all of the stories that I have found across the internet. So that will give you a broader range of the stories. Today, though, I'm a long way from that first video. Today, during today's presentation, I'll be sharing what I now know, personal truth, to be true about Lemuria. I have received many, many channeled messages and downloads and insights about Lemuria, about the history of Lemuria, and specifically about the crystals. So I'm going to be sharing my own knowledge of what happens, and much of that supports the knowledge that is already available. However, some of that contradicts the stories out there, and even contradicts what I shared the first time around, because again, I have formed my own beliefs about Lemuria now. So should probably call this Valerie's story of Lemuria, because I'm going to be giving you my insights, my channeled messages, what I know to be true about Lemuria. All right. Okay, so even after I had shared what I had researched in that event, I know there was a lot more to the story. I just felt that there was something more than what I was able to find on the internet. I didn't know what it was, and I couldn't really explain why I was so drawn to the crystals. I just knew that I really, really loved the crystals. So as I connected with the crystals, because have I did have a stock of crystals, and I still do have a stock of those crystals. And so I was able to connect with those crystals on a deeper level over the course of since the last time I did this event to today, which is a little bit over a year. I knew somehow, first of all, let me say, I am a Syrian star seed. And I knew somehow that these crystals were related to my Syrian ancestry. I just didn't know how, and I couldn't figure it out. And I couldn't find anything on the internet at that time that linked all of these energies together. My explanation for how these crystals were linked to Syrian did not come to me until I stopped doing the research and I started listening. And I started listening to my guides, when I started listening to my interstellar friends, that's when I began getting downloads and channeled messages that gave me all of the information I needed about how they're linked. I began to understand the true story of Lemuria and how I personally was connected to that civilization, which explained why I love these crystals so much. So we're going to talk a little bit more about my story of Lemuria. This is an artist depiction of Lemurians. This image itself is all over the internet for many different purposes. I could not find the original artist, so I do apologize if you're watching this on YouTube and you're like, hey, that's my picture. I don't know who the original artist is. It's not mine. I just want to let y'all know. So Earth was seeded by many beings that did not originate from Earth. Many of us hold that belief, that understanding that interstellars have for a long time interceded and helped with the advancement of humankind. I also hold that belief. So interstellar beings came to Earth and helped us. The beings that eventually became known as Lemurians originated from the Syrian star system. Now that is the information that I received by channeled messages, and it started to all click into place and make sense. Oh, that's why I like the crystals. So I do know that there is a connection between the Syrians and the Lemurians. I am still trying to get more clarity on that connection and exactly what it is. But here's what I know so far from the messages that I've received. The energy of Syrians and Lemurians are very similar, but slightly different. Their tie is definitely familial. So they are related by a bloodline. I just don't know the specifics of that bloodline and of that connection yet. Lemurians are definitely descendants of the Syrians, though. So these Syrian descendants came to Earth. When they came to Earth, they were initially still mostly in light body form. You can kind of see that depicted here in this artist's rendition of Lemurians. So they were in light body form. Light bodies mean that they were not from a three-dimensional plane. They were mostly still energetic light forms. But they were still able to be seen, and I do that in quotes. They were more felt than seen, but seen by humans, and they appeared as these flowy forms of energy and light, kind of like the picture. Not quite human form, not quite invisible. They were just these flowy light beings, is what I described in this. Now, just for clarity's sake, Lemurians are not the only light beings. This is just how Lemurians presented when they first came to Earth. So let me move away from the slides for just a moment. Okay, so from this higher dimensional plane, they explored Earth. So they were within our atmosphere, within what we consider planet Earth, but they were still in light body form, just kind of flowing around energetically, checking things out. They were also able to interact with humans. Lemurians were divine feminine energy. They were an extremely loving race of beings, and all of their interactions with humans were benevolent. They had the highest intent and hopes for humankind. They were enamored with humans. They wanted only the best for us. They truly loved us. There were also some of the beings that taught us all about love and unconditional love. Yes, there will be a recording of this on the YouTube channel. So there is, I just want to step away from that idea of them for just a second. There's an indigenous saying about connecting with nature. It says that in order to connect with the river, you have to become the river. Or to connect with a tree or a bird, you have to become the tree or the bird. Now, the Lemurians also wanted a better connection with humans. So one of the reasons, not the only reason, there were other reasons, but one of the main reasons they left their light body form and came into the third dimension was so that they could better connect with humans. To connect with a human, they had to become human, to really understand our experience and be able to connect with us in a way that we could really understand their experience. So now I want to take just a moment to give a little bit of greater clarity of what I shared in that first video, because I know some of you are going to go watch it and you're going to say, that's not what you said the first time around. I know that's not what I said the first time around. The first time around, I said that Lemurians were shapeshifters, and they shifted into various animals in different forms, and they became rocks and they became trees, and some of them got stuck in those forms. I don't believe that that happened in a literal sense. Now my understanding with more clarity is that from their light body form, they took on the resonance, the vibration, the frequency of these various animals and objects during their exploration on Earth. So they didn't necessarily shapeshift into a fish and then get stuck as a half fish and a half person and become what we know as mermaids, which is what I said in the first video. That's not what happened. What happened was they are much, much, much more advanced than us. And they knew all about resonance and energy and vibration. They also knew how to shift and move and manipulate that vibration. So they simply matched the vibration of whatever it was that they were learning about or exploring at the time. So they didn't turn into a fish, but they matched the fish's vibration so that they could better understand the fish or the tree or the rock or whatever they were exploring here in human form. Now back to them actually taking human form though. So some Lemurians, as I said, so loved the human race that they took human form to be able to walk among us, to be able to understand us more deeply, and to be able to aid us from a physical plane. So we all know we're all spiritual beings. We receive help from our guides all the time. Sometimes it's a whisper in our ear about what to do, what to take, what needs to take place. But having someone physically in your presence, yanking that steering wheel saying, turn here or avoid the accident, is different than having a voice telling you to turn here. So they wanted to be able to interact with us in a physical sense, which is why some of those Lemurians took physical form so that they could have that closer connection to humans. Now, I feel like I'm kind of all over the place, but stick with me, follow me, it's all going to make sense. Lemurians in their interstellar form, we did talk about them taking human form, but before they became human, in their interstellar form, Lemurians were and still are very high frequency and very ancient life forms. They are known as healers, as nurturers, poets, songwriters. They are very highly advanced in what we call technology, and they use crystals and crystalline energy patterns much more extensively than we do. They are ancient masters at manipulating energy and frequencies and vibrations. Now, much of this knowledge they retained even when they came down to denser human form. Even when they took on human form, they still retained this knowledge of how to manipulate energy. From their human form, they still knew how to do this. And the use of those skills from their human form looked very magical to the human eye. So let me share one explanation that was given to me about the Lemurians and about how they're able to, their ability to manipulate energy and frequencies and matter. They are able to manipulate matter because first they're manipulating the energy and the frequency of said matter. So this was what was explained to me in one of my channeled messages, one of the downloads that I received. Imagine that there is a wall in front of you and that you are in human form. Now, if you were a Lemurian with the knowledge of a Lemurian, you would not see that wall as a solid structure. You would see that wall as energy. You would be able to see it or observe it, understand it on an atomic level. Now, imagine if you could see every atom in that wall, and you were also conscious of every atom in your body. Now, if you shifted the vibration and the frequency of all of the atoms in the wall and told them to move to the left, and you shifted the vibration and the frequency of every atom in your body and told them to move to the right, and then you came up to that wall, you would be able to pass through that wall because none of your atoms would hit any of their atoms because they've all shifted to this way and yours have all shifted this way, and you can pass through without any of your atoms being in the same space at the same time. So from a human eye, we would be like, oh shit, that alien just walked through the wall. But from the Lemurians' perspective, they were manipulating the energy and the frequency of what was around them in their physical space. So they retained that knowledge of how to manipulate energy, how to move atoms around using frequency. So the things that they were moving, the things that they were manipulating was mostly done on a frequency or vibrational level. This is all information that was handed to me, but that gives you an idea of how they were able to do these things that we consider, I don't know why I keep doing air quotes, but that we consider non-human, superhuman, superhero powers because they were using energy waves to move things, manipulate things. Masters. Now they also, from their human form, they also loved showing humans how we could do the same thing. Lemurians were like the original Yoda masters, showing our ancient human ancestors that can be thought of as young Luke Skywalkers how to use the Force, how to use the energy, prana, that was around us, that our entire universe is made of. They were here to show us how to tap into that universal energy, how to use it, how to manipulate it, reminding humans of our own power and connection to all that is. So they were, of course, a few other interstellar races doing the same thing in their own ways here on Earth. I don't want to give the impression that the Lemurians were the first ones and the only ones that were here helping Earthlings do these things. There were many races, but we're focused on Lemurians right now. So we have all of these cool visitors from space coming down, taking human form, teaching us all kind of cool shit, actually reminding us of our innate abilities and showing us how to use them. So it's very important to understand that as humans, we did not have these interstellars come down and zap us and give us powers. We had interstellars come down and remind us how to access the powers that we already had. That's a very important distinction because a lot of times we want to attribute it as something outside of ourselves that we need someone to grant to us or bless us with. And all we need to do is remember that we have those powers and those abilities and then just learn how to use them. And the Lemurians were experts at teaching us how to use them. So the Lemurians built a whole civilization here on Earth during their time on Earth. They, as I said before, they were healers by nature. And so they constructed these large healing temples made from crystals. They were called the Lemurian Crystal Healing Temples. You can search that on Google and you'll get a lot of information that'll go a little bit deeper. But just know that that is one of the main purposes of them visiting. One of the main skills that they taught us was how to self-heal and how to heal others. Now, after all of this interaction with Earth, things were pretty great. Humans were tapping into their powers. Lemurians were teaching us how to go to these healing temples, teaching us how to heal when we were sick or injured. But at some point, the Lemurians decided to bounce. They had had enough time on Earth. They decided to leave. They were like, great, we loved being here. Thanks for all the fish, we're gone. So what I know so far, what I've been told so far about why they left is first, it was in response to how humans were evolving at the time. There was a need for the Lemurians to take a step back for a while. And that's all I've been told about that, is that they needed to take a step back. Second, remember that I told you that the Lemurians were a divine feminine-led civilization. Well, at some point, there was a shift in the energies of Earth and things started to tilt towards a divine masculine-led civilization. Everyone who's an Earthling knows that. Well, I should say, modern Earth. There are still some civilizations that are divine feminine led. So because of that shift towards things being divine masculine, I do know that that's another reason why they decided to step out for a while. My details around that are kind of vague as to what caused the shift or why they were shifting to divine masculine. But all I know is that some of the Lemurians were ready to try that divine masculine way of living. And so they left Lemuria and founded Atlantis, and they became Atlanteans, or they became the predecessors or the ancestors of Atlanteans. Atlanteans is a divine masculine-led civilization. So that's the tie between Lemuria and Atlantis, the tie between Sirius and Lemurians. And again, back to the reason why they left Earth, the third and last thing I know about why they left Earth, not why they left Earth, but the third and last thing I know about their departure from Earth is that when they left, the Lemurians decided that Earth needed to have access to their knowledge. They wanted to leave behind the history of all of their time on Earth, the history of everything they had learned on Earth, but also the history of ancient knowledge of what happened before Earth, about why they came to Earth. They also wanted to leave the wisdom, which they have been teaching us all along, but they also wanted to leave the wisdom, the insights to help us realize that we have this knowledge within us. We have these powers within us. So they also wanted to help leave behind instructions on how we can tap into our true potential. If we ever decided to use our innate skills of energy manipulation again, or if we ever wanted to return to a divine feminine way of life, they wanted to leave us all of those instructions on how to do that and how to get there. So what they were leaving behind is basically blueprints, instruction manuals on how to tap into the ancient way of living and all of their knowledge that they had gathered thus far from before Earth and from living on Earth. They wanted to give all of that knowledge, leave all of that knowledge behind. Now, it's my understanding from what I have received insight on is that the Lemurians may or may not return to Earth because they were so extensive and so detailed in leaving behind the knowledge. There isn't really a need for them to return to intercede. It's like, we gave you the instruction manual, do with it as you may. So maybe they come back, maybe they don't. But as far as how they left that knowledge behind, that's where the Lemurian crystals come in. So the Lemurians stored all of this knowledge in crystals and then seeded or planted the crystals in Earth. The crystals were also given an intelligence of sorts, their own intelligence. And this intelligence let the crystals know when the time was right for them to come up and reappear. Whenever humans were ready to reclaim knowledge from crystals, whenever humans were ready to tap into their true potential, when humans were ready to learn how to heal themselves, when humans were ready to return to a divine feminine type of living, that's when these crystals would reappear. And the crystals would know that because they had this type of innate intelligence that was also embedded within the crystals. And so here we are today. We know, even with our human technology, that it is possible to store information, vast amounts of information, into tiny crystals. In our own human technology, we use crystals in watches, in computers, and in other technology. And we understand scientifically that crystals can and do store knowledge, and we know how to put that knowledge into crystals. So it is no leap of the imagination to understand that an advanced civilization would absolutely know how to do that without the use of computers and technology, because we know that crystals do indeed hold knowledge, hold information. So we're going to take a moment to look at these crystals and find out a little bit more about Lemurian crystals and what they have to show us. Before I go into that, I want to pause, and I'm asking only if there are questions about the information I have shared, or if there are questions about the story of Lemuria or the folklore of what I have shared. Later on, we'll open it up to general questions like, I heard this here, or could you clarify this? But for right now, I just want to make sure that what I have shared so far was adequately explained. I don't see any questions in chat, and I don't see any hands being raised. Awesome. So let's go back to the slides. Next, we're going to talk about what Lemurian crystals look like. Before I get into that, let me just explain Lemurian crystals, because I have to slow myself down and make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. And I want to give y'all an easy way to remember it. The Lemurian civilization, where it was situated, was in the middle of the sea, and it has since sunk below the surface of the water, just like Atlantis did. So Lemuria, as we know it, is below the surface of the sea. So before it was below the surface of the sea, I wish I knew the continents and where it was located. I knew it at one time, but let's just say there was a continent over here and there was a continent over here, and Lemuria was right in the middle. This continent, there were archaeologists and biologists who studied that this continent had lemurs on it, the animal lemur, and this continent had lemurs on it. And they could not figure out how lemurs were on both sides of this huge body of water. There was no way that that was possible unless at one time there was a land mass between those two bodies of water, which allowed the lemurs to go back and forth as they pleased. That's why these crystals are called Lemurian crystals. It's based on the fact that lemur was the person who found the lemurs on both sides of the water and who proposed the idea that there was once a landmass between those, decided to call that landmass Lemuria. Lemuria. I have to try to pronounce it right, Lemuria. So that's an easy way to remember how to pronounce it and how to spell it. There's other metaphysical knowings as to why that name was chosen, like it wasn't a coincidence that lemurs and that it was chosen to be called Lemurian, but we won't get into that today. I just wanted to give you a quick idea of how to spell it and how to remember how to say it. Okay, so back to what they look like. This is an excellent picture of a Lemurian crystal. A Lemurian crystal will most often have striations on multiple sides of the crystal running horizontally. And these are sometimes referred to, you can see them right here, sometimes referred to as a ladder. I'll talk more about the crystal structure as we get into the presentation, but for now, just know that the striations are an important way to identify a Lemurian crystal. Now, in order to access the knowledge that we talked about that it's stored within the crystal, you would rub your fingers, and you can kind of see that that's what this individual is doing. You would rub your fingers or your thumb along the striations. This activates the energy of the crystal and the knowledge of the crystal within, the knowledge within the crystal. In my experience with working with these crystals, accessing their knowledge and receiving messages from them comes in 3 stages. First comes the knowledge, then comes the understanding, and then comes the lessons on how to apply that to your own life. For example, upon first using a crystal, you might have a vision of various beings, of humans being able to levitate. I have received this message before. I know that humans and Lemurians were at one time able to levitate, but let's just use this as an example. So you're using a crystal for the first time, and you suddenly have these visions of humans and other beings being able to levitate here on Earth in modern times. And so that's the knowledge. As you continue to work with these crystals, next you're shown how they were able to accomplish this levitation. That's the understanding. So as you continue working with this, maybe you're understanding, oh, they were able to do this by manipulating the energy around them, by manipulating the energy within themselves, kind of like how we talked about themselves and walking through a wall. But they also manipulated gravity, or more accurately, they temporarily altered the gravitational pull of the area that they were occupying. This is information that was given to me based on what I know about levitating. So first comes the knowledge of what we can do. Then comes the understanding of how they were able to accomplish that. And lastly would come the lesson. Now, if that is a skill that I wanted for myself, levitation, I would continue working with the crystal and I would be shown how to practice levitation, how to manipulate the energy within myself, within the area around me, and how to alter temporarily the gravitational pull so that I could levitate, or so that I could levitate other things or other people. I personally have not gone that route. So I cannot tell y'all how to do it personally. I haven't studied that skill. That's not something that I'm interested in doing at this time. But I have received the message that levitation is completely possible in our human form, in our modern human form, and that they are more than willing to share that knowledge. That knowledge is stored in the crystals. I do know, just on a basic level, that in order to accomplish levitation, it does involve not being so 3D-ish, not being so tied to this 3D dimension. Being able to access higher vibrations and dimensions is definitely one of the skills that you would need to practice in order to accomplish levitation. And that's pretty much all I know about levitation, but that gives you the steps in a practical way of knowledge, understanding, and then the lessons. So many lessons are stored within these crystals. So many lessons are stored within these crystals. If you've ever asked, how do I do XYZ? And it seems like a superhuman something or something you heard, a Lemurian crystal is a really good way to tap into that and get that knowledge for yourself on how to learn how to do the things that you're asking about. Let's talk a little bit more also about what other type of information might be stored in these crystals and how they can benefit humankind. So how they can help us. There's another beautiful picture of a Lemurian crystal. I just love that one. First, and I'm only going to mention a couple. So this is not all encompassing. These are some of the top ways that these crystals help us now in our modern era, in our modern world, and that is accessing ancient wisdom of the universe. And what I mean by this is the origin stories. If you want to know what life was like when the Lemurians were on Earth, or why they came, or why they stayed, or why they left, or what other interstellars did, because Lemurians also had friendships and connections to other interstellars. All of that information is stored within the crystals. Origin stories of Earth. Lemurians were around, Syrians were around before Earth was around. If you're trying to tap into that information and get more information about why Earth originated, what's Earth's purpose as a planet, that information is stored in Lemurian crystals. So accessing ancient wisdom of the universe is one way that it can help us on an individual basis, but also on a collective basis by knowing where we came from. Second way is accessing dormant powers and human starseed activations. One of my favorite ways, because I'm a starseed. These crystals are also capable of, and it is actually one of their main purposes, to activate, one moment, to activate the memories of past lives as they relate to interstellar interactions, to activate skills and knowledge, excuse me, to activate skills and knowledge that has been dormant in your subconscious, and to activate dormant DNA. That sounds like a lot of fancy terms. What I'm saying is, in my case, I am a Syrian starseed. You all could be starseeds of various origins, or maybe you don't know if you're a starseed or not. That's fine. When I use a Lemurian crystal, if I want to tap into my Syrian abilities, my Syrian powers, I could very much use a Lemurian crystal to activate those things that are dormant within me as a human. I took human form, I stepped away from my Syrian form, but now I'm like, hey, I think I want some of that Syrian power-up juice in me. And so I use a Lemurian crystal to activate that. It's all still within you. We know, science, medical has studied, and we know that our DNA contains, I'm gonna call it dormant, contains inactivated strands. So we know this is true. We also know that those strands, through the evolutionary process, have been activated or deactivated many times within human history. So these crystals are being used now because we as humans are reaching for higher vibrations. In order to reach those higher vibrations, we need to activate things that have been dormant within us. Different energies, different stored memories, and different things within our DNA that will allow us to move into those higher vibrations can be activated by using these crystals. This one is an important one, and that's why I capitalized it. Connection, yay. All crystals can help you connect to something, but these Lemurian crystals are really good with connection. Lemurians, as I mentioned before, were high vibration and very connected beings. It was their connection and their vibration that allowed them to do all of the things that we consider to be magical. They are masters at teaching us how to improve our connection to higher frequencies and how to raise and maintain our own vibrations in those higher frequencies. In practical terms, what that means is that these crystals are capable of teaching us how to connect with our guides, with the spirit realm, with angels, with interstellars, and how to maintain that connection and benefit from that connection in our human lives. This includes skills like learning how to channel energy, channeling those higher vibrations into manifestations, into our physical world, and channeling those energies for healing, which we'll talk about in just a minute. One last thing on connection. It's very important to remember that Lemurians were a divine feminine ruled society. When we talk about connection, these crystals can also be used to connect with the divine feminine energy. So they can help you develop, connect, and balance your divine feminine energies. It's one of the most powerful crystals for tapping into divine feminine energy, in my opinion. And since I work strongly with divine feminine energy, I feel like I can say that very confidently, that if you are at all curious with tapping into that energy, a Lemurian crystal is going to be one of your top crystals that you would want to have in your toolbox. I call this the goddess crystal. I just made that term up when I was making this presentation. I don't know if there's a goddess crystal already in existence, but that's what I'm calling it. It's a goddess crystal. I like it. It very much helps you connect with that divine feminine. And it can also help you balance out those energies. And then the fourth one is healing, also capitalized, because remember, Lemurians built those large crystal healing temples. Healing was paramount to them in their civilization, in their day-to-day life. So one of the greatest skills of this civilization was their ability and their love of healing. Using these crystals for healing involves higher vibrational frequency work. Their effect is profound. It's a skill that takes practice and familiarity with the energies of the crystals. It's also about learning how to direct that energy, prana, that's the name that was given to me when I channeled this message about healing. And that is the energy that we can all access. But learning how to direct it in specific ways for healing is a skill that you will need to practice. It is a skill that anyone can master, though. This is also a skill that I was very recently instructed that I need to develop more fully, using these crystals specifically to access and channel Lemurian crystal healing energy. So, as a side, as a shameless self-promotion, be sure to be on the lookout for events in the future where we have healing sessions using these crystals. So those are the top 4 that I wanted to share today. There are many, many more benefits to these crystals, but in the interest of time, we're not going to go into all of those. Those are the top 4, and those are pretty general. So that kind of covers a broad spectrum of how you can use these crystals and how the Lemurians intended for them to be used to help our civilization. So now I want to talk just a little bit more about these energies in individual crystals. Again, I want to give credit to this artist. I love this artist depiction of a Lemurian individual. It's Adia Nova, I believe is how you say her name. So Lemurians were beings, we know that. And some of the Lemurian crystals were imparted with just the basics, so to speak, kind of like a batch style of imprinting knowledge. And this was done by the Lemurians, whose vocation was to store the knowledge of Lemuria in the crystals. So just imagine that that was your job. You woke up every morning, you went out to the crystal field, you said boom, and you imparted all of the knowledge of Lemuria and all of their vastness into all of the crystals. And you did that like just in a blanket style. Same information went out to all the crystals. That was your job. So we have many crystals that just have that basic overall, here's all you need to know about Earth history and everything, information stored in them. But most of the crystals, many of the crystals had knowledge stored in them by individual Lemurians. So occasionally you will find just a basic crystal, but that's not the norm. The norm is someone went out, put all of the basic information in the crystals, fine and good, well and good, but then Lemurians came along after them, and after all of the basic information was there, they imparted different information into it. So they all start with this basic information that I've been discussing, but after that step, individual Lemurians wanted to put their individual perspectives and knowledge into the crystals. So let's say we have Susan the Lemurian, and she loved the water. She loved everything about the water and all the creatures that lived in the water. So Susan picks up a Lemurian crystal or several Lemurian crystals. And these crystals already have the knowledge, the basic knowledge stored in it. But she wants humans to specifically remember their connection to water, to the oceans, to the seas, the lakes, the ponds. She puts everything she knows about what she loves into several of these crystals. And she knows that these crystals will find the person who will most benefit from this knowledge. Now, let's say human Abigail, several thousand years later, walks into a crystal shop and wants to buy a Lemurian crystal. She fondles all the crystals, but one crystal just feels right. She can't put it down, and she knows she just has to have that crystal. It looks very worn, very tattered, kind of scuffed up. It's definitely not the prettiest of the crystals, but something about that crystal just calls to her. Now, Abigail is a marine biologist, and she picked that crystal because that crystal was once loved and held by Susan the Lemurian. She is drawn to it because of the specific, more detailed knowledge that it holds about Susan's wisdom as it relates to all things water. It was heavily used and loved by Susan, and that's why it looks more worn than all the other crystals. Now, that's just an example for the sake of this presentation. I don't know a Susan or an Abigail, but you can see how specific Lemurians had specific things that they wanted to impart to the human race. And so they would put that information into the crystals that they worked with, the crystals that they used, or just a batch of crystals which they had access to, and then leave those behind for the human race. So I'm saying that to say not all Lemurian crystals are the same. Depends on who the Lemurian was that imparted that extra or additional knowledge into the Lemurian crystal. However, all Lemurian crystals do carry that same basic knowledge as we talked about before. So it's as if many of these crystals have a signature. That's what I would call them, a signature, so to speak, the additional energy of the specific Lemurian who put that knowledge into the crystal. As I mentioned before, those crystals that look worn and tattered and not so pretty that you would generally, from a human perspective, want to toss aside, and there's no way I'm going to pay money for that thing. It looks like it's been run over for a truck. Those are the ones that have been heavily used by the Lemurians themselves. So those are the ones that I consider to be more valuable. Now, am I bougie when it comes to my crystals? Sometimes, and sometimes I prefer the prettier crystals over the tattered ones. But I'm letting you know this so that as you go crystal shopping, you don't overlook the tattered ones. You realize that those have their own special qualities and their own special energy. This is also why I often, as a practitioner, know which crystal is for which person. I don't necessarily know all of the exciting insights that the individual will derive from the crystal. I don't always know but I do know which crystal has your name on it, so to speak. So when I intuitively pick crystals for people, I just intuitively know this crystal is absolutely for you. I might not know that you're a marine biologist, and I might not know that Susan the Lemurian put water energy into this particular crystal, but I just know intuitively that this crystal belongs with you. And so I am really good at picking Lemurian crystals intuitively. But finally, what I want to say on this matter is I want you to always, always, always capitalize, bolded, and underlined. Trust your own intuition about which crystals you are drawn to. And I want you to trust your own intuition over and above anything, any crystal guide, any psychic, any intuitive ever tells you, because these, especially when it comes to Lemurian crystals, because they have their own type of intelligence. The crystals work and speak to you energetically. So listen to that, tune into that. If you feel drawn to a particular crystal, there's a reason why. Trust that feeling. Now we are going to talk a little bit more about these crystals from a scientific viewpoint, talking about the crystal structure, how they look, some identifying marks and what they mean on a metaphysical level. Things like channeling crystals or healing crystals. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. Before I do that, again, I want to pause and ask, are there any questions about the information that I have presented so far? Any clarification needed? I will wait just a moment. I'm not seeing anything in chat. My moderators are saying no. All right. Oh, we do have one, Elam.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, so my question is it possible that if your resonance with a crystal can be strong enough where the crystal can have an influence on you before you even encounter it? Where the knowledge is...
Can have what?
The crystal can have influence on you, like giving you knowledge, even before you kind of make contact with it, if your resonance with it is strong enough.
Absolutely. And that is what, we'll talk about that a little later actually, but yes, that is what I would consider channeling the energy of the crystal. And we will definitely get into that later, and I'll give you examples of how you can do that, but absolutely, yes, you could be, there's so many examples of that, but I will just give you an absolutely yes on that. Yes, you can absolutely get messages from or receive the energy of a crystal, even if you aren't physically holding it and moving your finger up and down on the striations like we talked about before. And we will go more in depth on that in a little bit. All right, so now we're going to talk about the identification of Lemurian crystals. How do you do that? How do you know you have a Lemurian crystal? If you're looking for crystals, if you want to deal with these crystals, how do you do that? And what type of Lemurian crystal will best benefit you on your journey? So clear quartz crystal and Lemurian quartz crystals have the exact same mineral composition. What that means is if you put a clear quartz crystal and a Lemurian crystal under a microscope, they will look exactly the same. So what makes a Lemurian a Lemurian? Lemurian crystals, again, I'm going to keep emphasizing this. You can see from the picture there, they are not the beauty queens of the crystal world. In their raw natural form, they look like heavily used crystals because they were heavily used crystals by the Lemurians, which adds a bit of charm and mystery to the crystal. What I want to show you next is going to be a basic diagram of a crystal, just so that when I start talking about the different parts of a crystal, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's not real complicated. A standard quartz crystal, remember Lemurian and standard quartz are the same thing, has 6 faces near the point and 6 sides. In their natural state, quartz crystals are formed as double terminated, which means they have 2 points, which is shown here in the illustration. Points at both ends. However, the lower point is usually the point that is embedded in some type of rock formation. And when these crystals come loose or when they're harvested, it often loses that lower point. So you often have crystals that look like this. The lower point is gone and you just see the top point. This diagram is going to help you understand what I'm going to talk about next. So we have the face, which would be the faces are the areas up at the top that form the point. We have the point, of course, and we have the sides, usually 6 sides around the exterior of the crystal. That's really all you need to know for the next part as I talk about how to identify Lemurian crystals. Okay, so the identification of Lemurian crystals. The first thing to look for when identifying Lemurian crystals, and many of you are very familiar with this, is striations, because many of you know all about the striations, and I just talked about the striations, and that's how you access the information held within. Went too far there. Striations on a Lemurian crystal are the ladder type indentions. I don't know what else you would call them. I'm gonna call them striations. That's what they're called. But it's the ladder type things going horizontally across the thing. Now, many people think that any clear crystal that they pick up that has striations horizontally across them makes it a Lemurian crystal. And I used to think that as well. That is not true. Many crystals have striations. Even tourmaline, black tourmaline has striations. You can see the striations running this way. However, you would hold the crystal this way. So the striations are running vertically, not horizontally like it would in a Lemurian crystal. So one thing is to not just look for striations, but make sure that the striations are running horizontally to the points of the crystal. But that is not the only thing, because both clear quartz crystals and Lemurian crystals can often exhibit striations, which makes it very difficult when you have both of them together on your desk and you're trying to figure out which one is which. I've done that myself. So another thing to look at is not just the striations themselves, but to notice that oftentimes they are alternating. So you'll have one side, and remember we talked about 6 sides. You'll have one side that's striated, one side that's flat, another side that's striated, all the way around. Lemurian crystals that have the alternating sides are called Lemurian seed crystals. So if you've ever gone on the internet and you see someone call something a Lemurian crystal and someone else call it a Lemurian seed crystal, that's the difference. A Lemurian seed crystal has the alternating sides of striation. Again, that is not the only defining way of how to tell if it's Lemurian or not, because clear quartz crystals can also have that. And you can also have Lemurian crystal. I have several Lemurian crystals that do not have alternating sides. But I do want to point that out, because if you find that, that is one of the clearest ways to identify that it is a Lemurian crystal. But we need to keep going. Other identifying factors, etching. This photograph, not my own, found on the web, is a very clear representation of what etching looks like. Etching, if I had to describe it to someone who could not see it, and if you can use this description too, if you're trying to explain etching to someone who can't see the crystal in front of you, I often describe it as it looks like the side of a very flat-faced mountain. So it kind of looks like a rock surface, but it would be a very flat-faced mountain. That's the best way I can describe etching. But you can see there on the picture what it looks like in real form. So etching is another way to identify a Lemurian crystal. Alternating translucency. And here is the best image I found. I could not find one of my crystals that would show up well on camera to show this, but it's where you have one side that is etched and frosty, and then the alternating side in between is crystal clear, where you can actually see through or into the crystal. And then another side that is either etched or striated and frosty looking. So that alternating translucency is also a way to tell that it might be, or it probably is, a Lemurian crystal. This one, I actually had a crystal that looked almost identical to this one, and I do believe I sold it. But another factor or aspect, a way to tell, is an elongated face. So this, even though it looks like a side, is not the side of the crystal. This starts at the point, which means it is one of the faces of the crystal, and it is just a very, very long face. So elongated faces are one of the key ways to tell that it is indeed a Lemurian crystal. I just love that crystal, by the way. I kind of miss mine that I had like that. And then the other one is extra faces. Do I have, I don't have the image for that one. Oh, I don't have the image for that one because I have a crystal that I can actually show you that has that on it. And I hope you can see it in the camera. I'm going to stop screen share. So hopefully, so here you can see it if you look close. I'm pointing out here in just a minute. Here we have, the point is up here. Y'all can't even see most of the faces, but here's the side. And on the side, it looks as if a razor has come and shaved off one of those angles. And so we have an extra face right here. I hope y'all can see that. I'm sorry, an extra side. There's a side. There's a side that was created just because it looks like a slice was taken out of this crystal. And there's the other naturally occurring side. Let's see if I can get the light. You can kind of see it in the shadows. I hope y'all can see what I'm talking about. An extra face appears as if you have shaved off part of the crystal, just like I said there before. It's just below the primary termination facets, which I know are big words. It just means it's not part of the top of the crystal. It's part of one of the sides, and something has occurred to make it have an extra side, an extra face. So if you are looking to purchase a crystal and wanting to make sure that it's a Lemurian crystal, those are some of the things that you can look for, some of the top key identifying factors. Not all crystals will have all of those factors. So if you pick up a crystal and it's got 3 of the 4 and you're like, oh, that's not Lemurian. No, it's still Lemurian. Just look for these things to be some of the key ways that you can identify it. I would say look for at least 2 or more of those factors to help you identify that this is indeed a Lemurian crystal. Of course, another way to identify if it is a Lemurian crystal, and this kind of answers Eolim's question, is just to sense the energy of the crystal. Many of you are very empathic. You can use that empathic ability to also sense energy around you. And you can just ask the crystal, what is the crystal's true nature? Are you Lemurian? And then wait for an answer. You can hold the crystal and let your intuition tell you if this is real Lemurian or if someone has mislabeled it by mistake. Another way is to use your divination tools. Maybe you use your pendulum to give you a yes and no, or you hold your pendulum over the crystals and ask which ones are Lemurian and which ones are not. There are so many different ways that we can use our metaphysical skills, our psychic abilities to determine whether or not the crystals are Lemurian, even if we can't find any of the identifying marks. I was one of those people who in the very beginning mistakenly put all of my Lemurian crystals right next to my quartz crystals. And I had to use that method to tell them apart. I had to ask myself and my higher self, okay, spirit, which one of these are actually Lemurian and which one are not? I also had the wonderful assistance of Jillian. Many of you know Jillian, who helped me identify some of the ones where I just couldn't identify them. But so I want you to, yes, know the basic physical properties of Lemurian crystals, but also always rely on your intuition. Always fall back on that and trust your intuition is leading you to the crystal you need. Okay, let's see. What do we want to talk about next? Next, I'm going to talk about some special types of crystals. Like I mentioned, the channeling crystal or the healing crystal. I want to talk about special types of crystals and how they can aid you on your spiritual path. This is going to be more about their crystal structure and what makes a channeling crystal a channeling crystal. I want to pause and encourage you, heavily encourage you, to attend my Lemurian sale event, which is happening on Monday, May 8th, which is 2 days from now. And here's why. Even if you do not have any inclination of wanting to purchase a crystal, but you are still interested in all of the different ways that those crystals manifest, like you want to know what a window is, or you want to know what a channeling crystal is, and you want to see one in person, or you want to know what a healing crystal is. I'm not going to have time to go into all of those types of crystals in today's event, but I will be showing those types of crystals that I have in stock and going more in depth into what makes it a channeling crystal and how you can use the channeling crystal during the sale event. So I invite you to come to that event if you want to learn more in depth about all of the crystal types that I have in stock. But today, in the interest of time, I'm just going to go over some of my favorites. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a channeling crystal. Let's go back to the screen for that. A channeling crystal, this is not my sketch, but my sketch would probably look much worse than this. This is Kyle Russell. He has a website where he talks about the different types of crystals. You can Google Kyle Russell and Lemurian crystals and you'll find a wealth of information. But this is how you can tell a channeling crystal. And this is so easy to tell. And you might have quartz crystals, you might have smoky quartz crystals, you might have rose quartz crystals, you might have whatever other type of quartz crystals that are actually channeling crystals. This is not exclusive to just Lemurian crystal. This is for any quartz crystal. And the way you tell is that, remember we talked about it has six faces that come to a point. The way you tell us it's a channeling is that you have only 3 faces that extend all the way up to the point, and the other 3 faces do not touch the point. So we still have 6 faces, but only 3 of them actually come together to form the point, and they are alternating. So you'll have one that makes the point, one that doesn't quite make the point, and it's always triangle in nature. The ones that don't touch the point are always triangle in nature. One that makes it, one that doesn't. So another way, if you're looking at it and you're like, okay, I kind of think that's only 3 making it, it's look at the one that you think it's touching and making the point, and then look directly across and see if you can find a triangle. I will tell you with my experience, because I have worked with many of these, sometimes that triangle is so tiny that you really need to hold it up to the light and let the light hit it to see if there is a triangle. Oftentimes I will have a crystal. Now I know it has 6 faces. I'll have a crystal and I'll only be able to find 5 faces. And I'll have to look really, really close to find that really small, tiny triangle. So that's how you tell if it's a channeling crystal. Alternating faces, only 3 reach the point. The ones that don't reach the point are triangles. Even better is if the ones that don't reach the point are the striated ones, because the ones that do reach the point will be the clear, flat shaped ones. Sometimes you'll see the striation in the triangles. Sometimes you will not, because the triangles are so small or they're so worn because they're so tiny that you just won't be able to see the striations. So don't think that just because you don't see striations, it's not a channeling crystal. It's based on the structure. It's based on the structure of whether it's a channeling crystal or not. So if you have a lot of crystals, I invite you to pull out your crystals, any crystals that are quartz, and see if any of them are channeling crystals. Let's see. Okay, so that's a channeling crystal. Did I put a slide? I did not. So channeling crystals, of course, can be used for, let's talk about the uses. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Use them for channeling. You can use them in meditation to help you develop that deeper connection so that you can receive those channeled messages or those downloads. Downloads, channeled messages to me are kind of the same ballpark. You can use them to receive channeled messages and to also channel energy. And it can be used as a wand. So you've received this channeled energy and you can use a channeling crystal to then direct, using the point, you would point it to where you want to direct it, to direct channel energy. So channeling crystals can also be used in healing practices. If you are channeling energy that is outside of yourself, which we all should do if we are working on healing others. So you would call in that energy and use that channeling crystal as a wand to direct that energy to whoever or whatever you are trying to heal. Keys. Here's an image of a key. I've circled it here. Let's talk about what it is. And this is a direct quote from crystalvaults.com. A key crystal has an indentation on one of its sides that narrows as it penetrates. So it gets kind of smaller like that. And the indentation is normally 3-sided, but sometimes 6-sided. Sometimes, again, you will not be able to see and count all of the sides on a very worn crystal. So what you would be looking for is an indentation, specifically an indentation that looks as if another crystal used to lay right next to this crystal and was removed, and it left an indentation on this crystal. So that's what you're looking for, an indentation, and it's called a key. Now, according to crystalvaults.com, a key crystal shows you how you are being dominated. You use these key crystals to find ways or to find the keys to free yourself from dominion and abuse. This key is the key to freedom. Key crystals are liberator crystals. You use them in meditation to focus your energy on your own needs and to build resistance to any hurtful influences of others. You can carry a key crystal as a personal talisman to remind you of self-respect and dignity, and to remind you that you are respected and you do not need to be dominated over by any outside forces. So that's according to Crystal Vault. She goes on to say that key crystals are not about unlocking hidden mysteries. That's where we disagree. I believe that keys, and this again is information that I've checked with my guides and they told me it is correct. I also believe that keys can be used to unlock anything that you feel has been hidden from you, or anything important here, listen to my phrasing, that you feel as if you need permission to access. We don't need permission, but good Lord, the stories we humans tell our human brains. So if you feel like, oh, I need permission to access the Akashic records to look into my past, maybe you want to use a key crystal, because if you feel like you've been denied something and then you feel like you need to be granted permission, a key is a way of unlocking that for yourself. When I talk about things that you feel might be hidden from you, mostly I'm talking about those things that you probably have hidden from yourself, those things that you have hidden in your subconscious mind, or that you have hidden from your memory that you want to unlock because you feel like something is there. And if you just knew what it was, you could refocus your life, or you could reposition yourself. So keys are good for that. Keys are good for looking into hidden meanings of dreams. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Think about anything that you have ever thought was hidden or off limits to yourself. And this key crystal could probably, Spirit is like, hold up now, don't say could probably. A key crystal will help aid you in finding your way to unlocking that information. Again, these attributes or aspects are not exclusive to Lemurian crystals. However, I see them most often in Lemurian crystals. So keys are another one that I love. Windows and time links. I really love these. So the window crystals come to a person when he or she is willing to honestly look within the self to accept the truth. I'm reading this as a quote from Melody, Love is in the Earth. Examples of 2 techniques for, let me talk about what it is first. A window is, remember when I talked about extra faces? When we have all of the sides and all of the faces, and it looks like somebody came and sliced part of the crystal off and we have an extra face, that is a window. Now, oftentimes a window will be just I want to say a triangle, but it's not a triangle, a 4-sided diamond. Why did my brain forget the word of that shape? A diamond. If it is a perfectly shaped diamond, then it is just called a window. And those occur on the side as an extra face. However, if it is an elongated diamond, so it's not perfectly shaped, it's elongated, And this one I would consider elongated if I saw this one on one of mine. If it's an elongated diamond, then that type of window is called a time link. And in this case, we see that if we're looking straight ahead, it looks as if that window is tilted backwards, which means that is a time link to the past. If you have one that looks as if it's tilted forward, that is a time link to the future. And what those windows allow you to do is, specifically in the case of time links, is look into your past, or anyone's past for that matter, if you're a practitioner and you have their permission, or look into the future, probable future, because we don't predict futures because everything is free will. Look into the probable future for yourself or for someone else with their permission if you are a practitioner. So it's a very valuable tool if that is your wheelhouse of maybe you are someone who looks into past lives for other individuals, or you want to know more about your own past life. This is the kind of crystal you would use. Future facing, y'all know how you would use that. But a window specifically. So let me go back to the diamond shaped window. If it's just a window, this individual has said that they are for gaining insights into areas of concern in order to receive information from the keeper of the crystal. So information from Lemurian knowledge. The window, as you look into it, will reflect back to the mind the impressions, colors, and feelings of the auric body. So if you're looking into this window to gain deeper insight into yourself, because that's what you would use just a regular window for, it's going to give you visions, colors, impressions. It's as if you are looking through a window to gain a more clear and accurate picture of what lies within. So using these windows, time links, you're often going to get visually channeled messages because it is called a window for a reason. It's as if you are looking through it to see something on the other side. The other thing it says about these crystals is that they can also be used to open the third eye, because we know the third eye is how we see in the physical world, and to assist one in defining your life purpose, to help you see the in-between times between lifetimes. Let's see what else it says. When working with others, it might allow you to see their aura more clearly. If you have been working on trying to see someone's aura, you might want to grab yourself a quartz crystal with a window on it and work with practicing that, looking into the crystal to help that crystal window expand your field so that you can better see auras. Oh, the last thing I wanted to mention is window crystals, according to this person, have also been used to locate missing persons and lost items. And I thought that was really interesting because when I think about windows, I think about all of the things I just said, but I also think about the actual method of using this crystal. You would need to look into the window. And when I look into a crystal, any crystal, I'm scrying. That's what I'm doing. I'm looking into the crystal to see if there's any visions, any reflections, anything that comes to me from visually looking into the crystal. And to me, that is the definition of scrying. So these crystals can be used as a form of scrying, to find lost objects, to find missing people, to see into those things that are not visible to our actual human eyes. Okay, I believe those are my favorites. Again, there are so many others. There are rainbow infractions crystals that when you look at them, you can see rainbows in them. Those have special meanings. There are self-healing crystals, which can be used specifically for healing. Let me think of another one. There are record keeper crystals. There are so many different crystals. I have some of those. I will be discussing those more in depth in the cell on Monday. But for the interest of time, I'm just sharing my top crystals, the one I love, and the more common ones that you'll be able to find in Lemurian crystals and also in other quartz crystals. I do think that is my last slide, so let's stop there. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit more about using crystals to heal, because that is one of the main purposes of Lemurian, their civilization, and why they've left these crystals behind for us, and because that is going to be what we are going to meditate on when we use the crystals for the meditation. So healing with these crystals. It is my belief that all of these crystals are excellent healing crystals, whether they were just basic. I don't know why I just said that. Whether they were just imported with basic Lemurian knowledge, or whether they were picked up by a Lemurian and actually used and imparted with more specific knowledge, doesn't matter. They are all good for healing because that was the modality of the Lemurians. They love to help heal. So when you use the Lemurian crystal for healing, there are so many ways that you can do it. If you're using it for yourself, you would just want to channel the energy of the crystal, specifically focusing on using it as a healing crystal and setting the intention that that energy goes where it needs to go. Now remember, they're also good at activating DNA and activating dormant things within us. So they're also good at physically manipulating our body. I firmly believe that a Lemurian crystal has the ability to energetically go in and not rewire is not the right word, but bring our, on a molecular level, bring us back to a full health state. Because these crystals remember what our cells are like when they're in their fullest, most vibrant, highest vibration, healed state. And they help your body to remember that too. And so they go in and they talk to the cells within your body, the energy from the crystals, go into your body, talk to the cells within your body, remind your cells of their healthiest, most highest vibration, and encourage your cells to reach for that vibration again. Our cells on a molecular level can also reach for higher vibrations. And that's what happens when a healing occurs. So understanding, again, this is the understanding. We know this crystal heals, that's the knowing. The understanding is how it does that, is it raises the vibration and the frequency of our bodies on a molecular level to facilitate more rapid, more complete healing. Is it an overnight cure? You already know the answer is no. So you're going to need to work with these crystals on, for however long your spirit guides tell you to work with these crystals if you're working on healing something specifically. If you are a practitioner, you want to use them for someone else, I highly suggest you get all of the knowledge that you can about these crystals and that you practice with yourself first, that you gain the insight and the practice with yourself first before you go trying to use it on someone else. So you have a friend who's sick. You just came and listened to Valerie's whole spiel about Lemurian crystals and you're like, oh my God, I bet you would be healed if I just use this crystal on you. If you've never used a Lemurian crystal before, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to tell you what to do. You would be better off telling your friend who is sick, take this crystal, it's used for healing. You would be better off doing that, even if they have no knowledge of the crystal. The crystal will do what the crystal needs to do. You would be better off doing that than trying to pick up a crystal and become a healer overnight to heal your friend. So yes, they are powerful, but unless you are practiced with them, unless you feel confident, unless spirit is telling you to use them on someone else, I would suggest you always start with using them on yourself. If you know of someone who is in need of a crystal, I would suggest gifting them or giving them or directing them to these crystals as a form of healing before you try to use it for them. I'm saying that cautionarily, that's not a word, I'm making that word up. I'm saying that with a lot of caution because I know how powerful these crystals are. That is not to scare you away from using these crystals. I was scared away from using crystals before, and that was very bad. I do not want to scare you away from using these crystals. I want to let you know that everyone has the ability of harnessing these powers and using these crystals, but it takes practice. You are more likely to learn how to drive a Honda Civic than you are to get in a huge monster truck and be able to take that on the highway at 80 miles an hour. It just takes skill to be able to navigate something that is more powerful. That's not saying you can't do it. It's not saying don't do it. It's saying take your time to figure out how to do it properly, especially if you're planning on using these in your practice with other individuals. So I hope I made myself clear. I want you to know how powerful these are. I don't want you to scare you away from them, but I do want you to hold them with reverence and practice the energy of the crystals before you go about using them for someone else, or even on yourself. Really, you should really practice the energy before you use them on healing yourself. Remember how I talked about the Lemurians were all benevolent and had our best interests in heart? It would be very, 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 very difficult to actually harm someone with a crystal. So you're not going to hurt somebody with this crystal. There's way too many fail-safes in place. When I talk about making sure that you know the power of the crystal, it's so that you can avoid any unintended effects. So maybe you're trying to heal your friend. This is a bizarre and completely not going to happen in real life, but I want to give you an example so that you can understand what I'm saying. Maybe you're trying to heal your friend and doing all of the things, and you're saying, I really want to heal you of your club left foot. But instead, because you don't really know what you're doing, you heal them of their acne. So it's not that you're going to hurt someone with it, but it might have unintended effects. You want to make sure that you know how to use it so that you can properly channel the energies to help someone or to help whoever that you're trying to help. I hope that makes sense. So a little bit more about the healing properties of these crystals. I've talked time and time throughout this entire presentation about Lemurian energy. So we know that Lemurians took their energy and sent it into the crystals. We know that we can pull that energy back out. How do we do that? How do we do that? How do we do that? Channeling. We're channeling the energy. We're moving energy. We're setting the intention that we're going to pull the energy out of the crystal. So do you need a crystal in your hand in order to benefit from the Lemurian crystal energy? No, you can channel it. You can channel it. Or if you're not an experienced or a skilled channeler, you can have someone else channel that energy and send it to you. Hello, hi. That's what I will be doing today for our meditation. So during the meditation, if you have a Lemurian crystal, go ahead and grab it. If you don't have a Lemurian crystal, just know that I will be using a channeling crystal. This is not a channeling crystal, but I do have a channeling crystal. I will be using a channeling crystal to send out Lemurian energy to everyone who is present, because I want you all to be able to experience what this energy feels like. She says, as she looks for the Lemurian crystal that is her channeling crystal. Where did it go? Found it. Here's my channeling crystal. Look, I think maybe y'all can see it. That is a clear channeling crystal. Very easily identifiable. I hope y'all can see it. 3 sides, all reaching the point, and the little bitty tiny triangles on the opposite sides. So Eola asked a question earlier, do you need to be present with the crystal, or can you feel the energy of the crystal? Yes, across all time and space. Across all time and space, you can feel the energy, tap into the energy of Lemurian crystals. So maybe you want to tap into one way back before anybody has used it. Maybe you want to tap into a Lemurian crystal way back in the beginning when they were first putting the information in it, when it was all shiny and new. You do you. Just know that you can pull that energy in without having the actual physical crystal with you. However, I do think that having the actual physical crystal with you will enhance whatever it is that you are trying to do. Any questions? I feel like I have talked and talked and talked. Any questions before we get into the meditation? Not seeing any questions. I'm gonna move on. Okay, the fun part. Y'all get to experience the energy of these Lemurian crystals. As I mentioned, I will be channeling that energy out to everyone who is present across all space and time. It doesn't matter when you watch this video, or if you are live participating with me here, you will be able to experience this energy. I encourage you to grab your own Lemurian crystal if you have one handy. And we're all going to prepare ourselves for this meditation. You can turn your camera off if you feel so inclined, but get yourself in a comfortable position. Relax and begin by closing your eyes and taking a deep breath into your belly and slowly exhaling. This guided meditation is intended to send healing energies out to each and every one of you. Today, we will focus on allowing ourselves to receive the healing energies and properties of the Lemurian crystals, of the Lemurian civilization, of the Lemurian people. Continue breathing deeply, allowing yourself to relax even further. Allowing all of your muscle groups to relax. Allowing your mind to relax. Allowing your energy to relax, to settle in. Imagine yourself in a peaceful surrounding. Perhaps imagine yourself walking in the ancient civilization of Lemurian. Looking around at how beautiful nature is. In the distance, you see a large crystal structure. You see individuals walking in and out of this structure. And you decide to get closer and to explore further. The closer you get, you realize that this is a crystal temple. They don't seem to be worshiping any deity or performing any type of ceremony. This is a healing temple. The structure is created entirely of crystals. As you approach the doorway, you begin to feel the energy of the crystals. It feels like love. It feels like clarity. It feels comfortable. Somehow you know that you have been here before. You slowly enter the temple and walk to the center, looking around in awe at all of the sparkling crystals. Beautiful prism rainbows cast across the room. You are the only one in this temple at the time. Everyone else has left. Sit down in the center of this beautiful crystal temple and just sense the energy around you for a moment. It feels warm and inviting. It feels nurturing. It feels like a big warm blanket wrapped around you. Soon a figure quietly enters and stands before you. This is one of the high priestesses of this healing temple. She begins to send energy to you. You feel that energy washing over you. And you notice a shift within your physical body. You're able to breathe more deeply. Your muscles relax more fully. There is no pain. There is no stress in your muscle. You feel as if you are entering a complete state of bliss. She continues sending energy to you, walking around you, shifting your energy, raising your vibration. On an energetic level, this high priestess is talking directly to your cells. She is directing them to initiate the healing that you have asked for. What is it you would like to be healed from in this present moment? Would you like to be healed from physical pain, from a physical ailment, sickness, disease? Would you like to be healed from past trauma, from memories? Perhaps you would like your energy to just be healed and cleansed from anything that is not serving you. Whatever you set your intention for, whatever you would like to be healed, be receiving of that healing now. This Lemurian high priestess is going to continue working on you, on your energy, for the next several moments as you sit in silence and fully allow yourself to receive this healing energy. The high priestess now lets you know that your healing has been initiated. She tells you to continue to call on the healing properties of Lemuria and of Lemurian crystals to allow this healing to fully integrate with your physical, mental, and spiritual self. For some, this will be a gradual process. And for others, it will feel more immediate. But for everyone, it will be a process that needs to be repeated in order to fully access the full healing potential of the Lemurians. You can call on this energy at any time from a meditative state or a waking state. You can return to this healing temple at any time to further your progress towards healing. The only thing that is necessary is a receptive heart and a receptive mind. You stand up and begin to leave the temple. But before you leave, the high priestess opens her hand and hands you the crystal. This crystal is energetic in nature, and you can carry this with you, even if you don't have a physical representation of it. This crystal is yours to keep. And this crystal will continue working with you on an energetic method to continue the healing that was initiated today. With gratitude, you thank her. You tuck the crystal into your pocket or under your clothes, and you leave this temple. You feel higher vibration. You feel lighter. You feel better. You feel as if something has shifted within you. You know that the healing process has started. Allow that feeling of healing to wash over you, to move through you. Allow yourself to fully feel that energy. Take a deep breath in as you fully integrate this healing energy from Lemurian into your physical body. And exhale anything that is no longer a match to it. Take another deep breath in and exhale. Coming back to your physical body, coming back to your location. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes and come back to the group. And that completes the meditation using this Lemurian energy. I hope you all were able to experience that and feel that energy. I hope you all have curiosity now, a heightened curiosity about Lemurian crystals. I hope you go out and get you one and begin using it. Again, we did healing because healing is pretty universal. But find one that speaks to you. Find one that you feel intuitively drawn to. There are so many benefits of these crystals aside from just healing. We talked about many of those today. So find one for whatever particular thing that you need that would most benefit you on your spiritual path. That is all that I had intended to share. I do want to open it up one last time, and this is for any questions you might have at all about Lemurian crystals, about the Lemurians, about any of the properties. Any questions you have, I will go ahead and open it up and see if we have any questions before we part ways. While I'm waiting for questions, I will keep talking, and I will let you know that I have several crystals for sale. I'm not sure if I held this one up yet. Several crystals of various sizes that will be on sale. I'm really excited about that. There's one that's really pretty with striations on them. I will also have smaller crystals that are wire wrapped. I hand wrapped these. I found these crystals. I picked these out by hand, and I also hand wrap them. I am a jewelry maker also. So I have several of those if you're looking for something smaller. And then I have various crystals of all sizes that will be available during the live event on Monday. Again, even if you're not interested in buying crystal, I do encourage you to come to that event to find out more about the different types of crystals that are available. Also remembering that the properties that I will be discussing are not exclusive to Lemurian quartz. They span all quartz. So there we go. Kathy said she'll be there. All right, thanks. I'm going to go ahead and stop the live broadcast. Thanks.